Hi everybody, welcome back. We're going to continue our reading for the week. We are on page 86. Okay. As 1940 ends, more British bombs have fallen over Hamburg, but the Nazis have overrun Poland, France, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. There are rumors, too, about large camps being built in Poland, camps where Jews will be forced to work, and the German people are deliriously happy that God has given them Hitler and that God is on their side. Helmuth, Rudy, and Brother Warbs spend New Year's Eve on air raid duty in a cold factory building that also doubles as their church. Carl should be here too, but he has found a New Year's party and sent a Mormon friend, Arthur Sommerfeld, as his replacement. To pass the time, Helmuth fiddles with a radio dial, trying to tune in a station other than the German Reich radio, the RRG. He twists the knob. Static. Twists again, and the radio coughs out a few garbled words of a Swiss broadcast. Twists again, and the radio growls German news. It's frustrating. Terribly frustrating, the way the Nazis jam the airways so that the German people can only listen to broadcasts approved by the Nazis. Helmuth longs to hear news other than the RRG, since the German news is always the same. If he lived closer to the border, he might be able to pick up a foreign station from England or Switzerland. But not here, not in Hamburg, not with the cheap people's radio. Helmuth gives up on the radio, snaps it off, and turns his attention to the card game that Rudy and Arthur are playing. Brother Warbs sits off by himself in a small circle of light, reading his worn Book of Mormon. The night passes slowly until Brother Warbs pulls out his pocket watch and calls, "Almost midnight, boys!" Helmuth scrambles to his feet, out of the room, and down the hall. Rudy and Arthur follow, clambering behind, up the narrow stairs, groping their way to the rooftop. They push open the heavy door and spill out onto the roof. In peacetime, the street lamps below would be lit and the city aglow with the light, especially tonight, New Year's Eve. People would have been heading out to parties, all dressed sharply. Instead, the night is as quiet as a shadow. Helmuth digs his hands into his pockets. He gazes at the jagged outline of buildings, at the church spires and the turrets. A car rumbles slowly down the street, its headlights shrouded. The driver must be a high-ranking official, for war rationing means that only important Nazis have ample access to gas and to food. Another minute passes, and it's the new year. Where there is no light, there is suddenly noise. Church bells clang, and in the harbor, ships blare their foghorns, and steam whistles shrill. "Look," says Helmuth. The boys follow his pointing finger across the jutted rooftops, where fireworks explode, blue, red, yellow, white, 1,000 points of brilliant light. It isn't as grand a celebration as it would have been before the war, but the boys gasp in amazement at the wonder and the danger of it all. 1941, says Helmuth, rolling over the feel of the numbers in his mouth, and for a moment the new year hangs there, ripe with hope and possibility. Somewhere, a police whistle shrills. There is always a fearful moment to wonder who they are coming after this time. The noise, the fireworks fade, and the boys retreat to their watchroom. Brother Warbs pours hot cider, and Rudy brings out Berliners, the special jelly donuts that his mother has saved her ration cards to make. Before they eat, Brother Warbs kneels and clasps his hands in prayer. In a strong voice he prays, "Lord, give us peace. Break the yoke of the Nazi butchers. Make us free." The boys are shocked into silence. They stare open-mouthed at Brother Warbs. He should know better. His words are dangerous and foolhardy, for Nazi informers lurk everywhere. "You'd better watch what you say in public," whispers Rudy. "I speak the truth," says Brother Warbs. "You can think whatever you want," says Helmuth to Brother Warbs, "but be careful what you say." Brother Warbs opens his Book of Mormon and continues reading, leaving the boys to check through the warehouse every few hours. Everything appears in order. The boys struggle to stay awake, but no air raid sirens sound. Finally, they fall asleep, awaking only when 3 Hitler Youth in uniform report for duty early the next morning. The boys bid goodbye to Brother Warbs and walk home. Helmuth remembers the feeling of hope and possibility he felt on the rooftop. He searches for it, tries to feel it again. He feels a sudden pang of sadness and something beneath the sadness. He follows the feeling, traces it back. It's Gerhard. He misses Gerhard. Noon. The small window in the cellar door slides open again. A bowl of watery cabbage soup is shoved through. The soup is possible to eat if he doesn't stop to smell it, doesn't stop to think about his grandmother's soup, her thick beef and barley soup, and the crusty bread to sop up the hearty broth. He longs for a letter. He'd surely trade soup for a letter. He misses his family terribly. So terribly he aches. He knows he has caused them much sorrow, much hardship, especially Gerhard. That he regrets, and only that. He gulps the thin soup. The late March day is bright blue as Helmuth enters the Lusenweg tenement, turns the key to the flat. The door is unlocked. Puzzled, Helmuth drops his satchel by the door, finds himself startled at a noise coming from the hall. It's Gerhard, standing at the closet, a gaping duffel bag at his feet. "You're home," says Helmuth. Gerhard is a sight for sore eyes, looking strong and fit in his brown Reich Labor Service uniform. The swastika armband fits snug. He has muscled out in the 7 months that he has been away. Gerhard grins. "I am, but it's only for a few days, a week, maybe 2 at most, until I get my draft notice." He bends over his duffel bag and takes out a brown radio. Helmuth spots the bright Rollo logo, sucks in his breath in amazement. "A shortwave radio?" he whispers. "Where did you get that?" Gerhard grins. "The black market," he whispers back. "Paid 5,250 francs. That's 25 marks." The black market? Germans stationed in France fill their duffels with items rationed or no longer available at home due to the wartime restrictions. 25 marks was cheap for a roller radio, even cheaper than the People's Radio. Gerhard sets the radio on the middle shelf in the closet. He makes room next to his paintings, his railroad cars, and his violin and mandolin and mandola. He locks everything away for safekeeping, because that's the way Gerhard is. "Wait," says Helmuth, as Gerhard inserts a key into the lock. "Let me keep the radio." "Don't be ridiculous," says Gerhard. "You can't listen to a shortwave. You know what happens to people who break the radio law." Gerhard stops mid-sentence, draws his finger across his throat for emphasis, and makes a cutting sound. Helmuth's temper flares. "The fur forbids everything," he says angrily. Helmuth holds his index finger to his upper lip, mocking Hitler's toothbrush mustache, and goose steps across the flat. "Swing music, verboten," he says. "Jitterbug dancing, verboten. Reading un-German books, singing un-German songs, staying out past the 10 o'clock curfew, criticizing Adolf Hitler or the war. Verboten, verboten, verboten." Gerhard grabs his brother's hand, grips it, iron-fisted. "Stop that," he whispers, shocked. "Are you a fool? Do you want the neighbors to hear?" Gerhard relaxes his grip. "The war won't last forever. Soon the fatherland will be victorious, and then—" Helmuth yanks his hand away, his fingers smarting. "And then what?" "And then we will take out the radio. In the meantime, we obey the law." Helmuth crosses to the window, pretends to watch a robin hopping about in the courtyard. There are times when he hates Gerhard. And why shouldn't he? Gerhard is so reasonable, so predictable, so resolute, always doing the right thing, obeying the law, even when he doesn't agree with it. Gerhard stands behind him, grips Helmuth's shoulders, tries to turn Helmuth to face him. Helmuth resists. Gerhard presses harder. Helmuth gives in, stares eye to eye with Gerhard, and realizes for the first time that they are nearly the same height. "I mean to speak to you man to man," says Gerhard. "Can you handle that for once?" Helmuth winces. How Gerhard can sting with so few words. Gerhard's eyes bore into Helmuth's. "The Nazi government is not the first unjust government in the world," he says, "nor will it be the last, but it will come to an end." Helmuth searches Gerhard's face. "Will it?" "Of course it will. Everything does, at one time or another." "No, it doesn't. Not to Helmuth. The war feels like infinity. The Nazis feel like infinity." Somewhere, a police siren wails thinly up and down, regular tempo, crisis under control, just like Gerhard. Gerhard is a good fit for the military, Helmuth decides. Even though he isn't a Nazi, has never been a Nazi, has never approved of Hitler and the Nazi government. Helmuth tries to keep the impatience out of his voice, to sound regular and even, under control like Gerhard, as if the radio doesn't matter. But his throat tightens around the words and he feels childish as he says, "Go ahead, lock it up, see if I care." "It's for the best," says Gerhard, "for everyone's best. To break the radio law would be a selfish act. It could endanger our family." Gerhard pushes the closet door tight and turns the key. Helmuth swallows hard at the click in the lock. The sound meddles every part of him, turns him cold inside. Maybe Hitler can take his rights away, but Gerhard can't. Gerhard will be gone in a few days. He can't stop Helmuth if he isn't here. It isn't a holiday, but Muddy and Oma treat Gerhard's homecoming as one. The flat is crowded with friends and family and feels as festive as Christmas. It doesn't even matter that Hugo is there, as proud of Gerhard in his smart uniform as if he were his real father. Oma leads the family in a mealtime prayer, and then bowls and spoons are passed out. Oma ladles thick, milky potato soup, carefully scraping the bottom to find enough for all of them. Somehow, there are plates of sausages and thick, crusty bread and even a brown cake with nuts. She cuts the cake into small pieces, enough to go around. Helmuth is about to bite into the cake when Hugo says, "So, tell us, my boy, what are you learning in school these days?" Helmuth sets down his fork on his plate. "I'm writing my thesis for graduation," Helmuth tells him. "It's about the difference between National Socialism and a plutocracy." "Splendid," says Hugo. "A political paper? Too bad the war will soon be over. The army could use soldiers like you. With your mind, you would make a smashing officer. It's too bad you will have missed it." Helmuth stops listening, feels a dark numbness spread inside. He thinks about what Muddy once said, that silence is how people get on sometimes. With his fingers, Hugo shoves the last bite of cake into his mouth. He stands and straightens his trouser legs. "Time to go, Emma," he says to Muddy. "I'm tired, you're tired, we're all tired." He stretches out his hand. Muddy smiles at Hugo and grasps his hand. As Helmuth watches her leave, he wonders if he'll ever understand how she could love such a man. That night, Helmuth, Gerhard, and Hans retreat to the bedroom at Oma and Opa's flat. Hans falls asleep right away, exhausted from his day's work at the shipyards. Helmuth lies on his back in the darkness, arms linked behind his head, watching the moon shimmer on the walls. He feels like a small boy again. "Gerhard," he whispers, "are you awake?" "Yes." "Do you believe God has cursed us with Hitler?" "No," says Gerhard. "We can't blame God for Hitler. The German people gave us Hitler when they voted Nazis into office. Like it or not, he is our Führer." "But he's a madman. How can we support him?" "We must support our country, especially now in time of war, and that means supporting our leaders." Gerhard rolls over, his back to Helmuth. Conversation ended. Helmuth lies awake for a long while, wondering if Germany deserves to win such a war. Gerhard's homecoming ends quickly. After only 2 days, Gerhard receives his draft notice on bright red letterhead, ordering him to boot camp at the army camp in Riebeck Gestacht, in the north of Hamburg. Helmuth sits on the bed, watches Gerhard stuff undergarments and socks into his duffel bag. It doesn't feel real, watching Gerhard pack as if he is readying for a bicycle trip. He wonders if he'll see his brother again. "I know how you feel about the war," says Gerhard, "but we must pray for Hitler to succeed, for if he does not, we all lose." Helmuth doesn't answer, just stares at the bookshelf. Gerhard won't let up. "Do you really think I can refuse to serve my country?" Helmuth won't look at Gerhard. He feels childish. He knows his brother has no choice, yet he wants to blame him for that. "You know I'm not a Nazi, but I must stand by my country," says Gerhard, as he pulls the cord and makes a tight knot. "What kind of a man would I be if I didn't?" "What kind of a man fights for something that he knows is wrong?" Gerhard doesn't answer for a long time, and when he does, his eyes look pained. "Don't tell me that I am risking my life in vain. Don't tell me that if I die, I will have died for nothing." Helmuth fears the answer. He swallows it and leaves the room.